What's up everyone, it's Bones here. In today's video, we'll be sounding the bell as a new challenger enters the ring with our new duelist pack at a main deck count weighing in at 40 cards and an extra deck weighing in at a count of 15 cards. We have the Battlin boxers. But before I begin, if you're a fan of in-depth combos, new set coverage, and occasional fun stuff that we like to do on the channel, then square up next to those like and subscribe buttons and fiercely strike them with a right and a left. I would also like to mention that I'll be doing a brief coverage on the Infernoble variant during this video while trying to keep the main focus of the video on the pure Battlin boxer deck. And in this first combo, we'll be starting with our first new card, Battlin Boxer Promoter. It reads, if your opponent controls a monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. You contribute this card, special summon up to 2 Battlin Boxer monsters with different names from your deck except Promoter. You can banish this card from your graveyard, increase or decrease the level of all Battlin Boxer monsters you control currently by 1. You can only use each effect of Promoter once per turn. You cannot special summon monsters the turn you activate any of this card's effects except Battlin Boxer monster. A rescue rabbit for the archetype that doesn't need to banish itself, so it can be hit by called by, though it does have the ability to special summon itself, making it a better going second card. But most importantly is the archetype block, and we're going to start by normal summoning the Promoter using its rescue rabbit effect in order to get ourselves our next 2 new cards. The Battlin Boxer Uppercutter reads that if this card is normal or special summoned, you can add 1 Battlin Boxer monster or 1 counter trap from your deck to your hand, except Uppercutter. If this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can activate one of these effects. Special summon 1 Battlin Boxer monster from your graveyard, except Uppercutter. The other one is set 1 counter trap from your graveyard. You can only use 1 Uppercutter effect per turn and only once that turn. So a solid card here that noticeably also has 200 defense as a fire monster and adds any counter trap. While the next new card, Battlin Boxer Chief Second reads, when an opponent's monster declares an attack and you control a fire and or warrior monster, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if you do, negate that attack. Then banish 1 monster in the field until the end phase. You can only use this effect of Chief Second once per turn. During your main phase, you can normal summon 1 Battlin Boxer monster in addition to your normal summon set. You can only gain this effect once per turn, so an extra summon along with the ability to be sort of a hand trap, and this deck can play into Nibiru so that hand trap effect does actually come up, as you can protect your board from potentially being attacked over, which is something I'll go over later on in this combo. But we're now going to go and use our Uppercutter's effect in order to net us a search for the Flamvell counter, which is just a spell and trap negate as long as we can banish a fire monster with 200 defense from our graveyard, and we do have that with the Uppercutter, as we're going to then go into our next new card, the Battlin Boxer King Dempsey. It takes 2 level 4 monsters, so it is generic, and it reads, if this card is special summoned, you can take 1 level 4 or lower fire warrior monster or 1 Battlin Boxing spell trap from your deck and either add it to your hand or send it to the graveyard. Quick effect, you can detach 1 material from this monster you control. Quick effect, you can detach 1 material from a monster you control, and if you do, your opponent cannot target Battlin Boxer monsters you control with card effects, though it only lasts during this turn. You can only use each effect of King Dempsey once per turn, and we're now going to use its effect in order to net us a search for yet another new card, the Battlin Boxing Cross Counter. It reads, when your opponent activates a monster effect, destroy 1 Battlin Boxer or number exceed monster you control, and if you do, negate the activation. And if you do that, destroy the monster, then you can apply this effect. Special summon 1 Battlin Boxer exceed monster from your extra deck with a different name than your destroyed monster, and if you do, attach this card to it as material. You can only activate 1 Battlin Boxing Cross Counter per turn, and this essentially gives us a monster negate along with a spell and trap negate, as we can now set to go on to our opponent's turn, and now we can even use the effect of King Dempsey for some follow-up, as you can detach the Uppercutter and then you can use the Uppercutter in order to revive the Promoter if your King Dempsey makes it that far into the turn. But I would also like to point out that if you end up using the crossing counter, you do have some options to summon, like the Battlin Boxer Commander Caesar, and this takes 3 level 5 monsters, gains 200 attack for each material attached to it. Once per turn, when your opponent would special summon a monster, quick effect, you can detach 2 materials from this card, and if you do, negate the summon, and if you do that, destroy that monster. If this card has number 79 Battlin Boxer Nova Kaiser as material, it gains this effect. Once per turn, when an attack is declared involving your Battlin Boxer monster and an opponent's monster, you can send 1 Battlin Boxer monster from your hand or deck to the graveyard, and if you do, attach that opponent's monster to this card as material. So just another piece of of support for the archetype that is pretty solid to pair with the counter trap, as we also have stuff like the number 79 Battlin Boxer Nova Kaiser mentioned on the rank 5 combo. I want to show a different route that you can take with just the promoter, because the deck is pretty flexible considering what you can do with an extra normal summon. So we're going to use the effect of the uppercutter now, as we're going to get ourselves a search, and we do have the chief second on board, so we can add ourselves the switch hitter, and then we can normal summon the switch hitter with the extra normal summon so that we can use its monster reborn effect. And now we can go into our King Dempsey. In King Dempsey's summon, we'll get a search for the crossing counter, as then we'll have access into another rank 4 that we can then go into the lead yoke with, as we'll use the King Dempsey now if you want to raise the attack of the lead yoke. This also gives you the ability to detach the uppercutter later on, and then have the ability to revive a Battlin Boxer monster. But with that, I'll take you on to the next one. So another combo that we have for Battlin Boxers, and there's 2 iterations of this, one for the Battlin Boxer deck and another for the Infernoble, and I'll show both. As we're going to normal summon the Battlin Boxer uppercutter, we're going to use its effect in order to net us a search for the Sparrer, and then we can special summon out the Sparrer, go into our King Dempsey. King Dempsey will then net us a search, as we'll be able to add ourselves the crossing counter, and from there we can set our crossing counter and end our turn on that. Now, the last combo in the pure version doesn't look like a lot, but what you can do with this card alone in actuality is pretty nuts, as we're going to normal summon it, use its effect in order to get ourselves the Sparrer again. We can then special summon it out, use its effect in order to go into our King Dempsey, use the King Dempsey effect to add along with the effect to detach so that we can protect it from targeting. We'll bring out our Renaud to our hand, special summon it out, then we can use its effect getting back the Sparrer, and this is a pretty nice interaction, as the Sparrer is not a hard once per turn special summon, and we can just keep on spitting it out. As we're going to special summon it, we're going to go into our Angelica. Angelica will then be able to net us a search for the field spell. As we're then going to activate the museum, we'll be able to use its effect, which will grab ourselves unequipped spells. We're going to add the Joyous, and then we're going to activate the Joyous onto the Angelica or the Battlin Boxer. It doesn't really matter, but we're going to bring back our Sparrer, and then we're going to special summon out the Sparrer so that we can get our Isolde access, activate the Isolde for an add, as we'll then use its effect in order to special summon out the Ricardetto, or however you pronounce its name. We'll then use its effect in order to bring back the Sparrer, and then we can use the effect of the Phoenix Blade to get that back to hand, as we'll then activate it on the Angelica so that we can use the Angelica's effect, banishing it, sending the Turpin, as we'll also be able to bring out the Roland. Then we'll synchro away into the Charles, as we're going to use the effect of the Roland, equipping it to Charles so that we can go into the Charles the Great, and then we're going to use the Charles the Great to bring back the Charles, or equip it to it, so that we can use the museum, special summon out the Charles, and then we can use the Phoenix Blade getting itself back to hand, as then we can activate it on the Charles. We can then use the effect of our Turpin to special summon it out, as we're going to go into our Roland, and then we're going to use the effect of Roland, as we can then go into our second Charles the Great, use its effect equipping the Charles, as we'll then go into our Flame Swordsman link, and this will round out our end board off of just the uppercutter, which is a really nice play for the Infernoble Knight. That gives your opponent a little bit of a guessing game on which variant you're going to be playing on Infernobles. For this next combo, we have Chief Second along with Uppercutter, and we're going to start by normal summoning the Chief Second. We're then going to normal summon the Uppercutter with the extra normal summon, use its effect in order to get ourselves the Flamvell counter. We can now go into our King Dempsey. King Dempsey will be able to net us a search for the crossing counter, as now we can set 2 and have our monster and spell and trap negation and end our turn on that. Now for this next one, we have Uppercutter along with Sparrer, and this will be another one for the pure variant, as we can use the effect of the Uppercutter in order to net ourselves the search for the Flamvell counter, special summon out the Sparrer, go into our King Dempsey, and this is just another way to get into your standard 2 negation board, as we're going to set the counter along with the Flamvell counter and end our turn on that. This next one, I want to show off some more promoter combos with promoter and the switch hitter this time around. So we're going to normal summon the promoter, special summon out our Uppercutter and the Chief Second, giving us the ability to get the extra normal summon along with a search, as we're going to add our counter. We're then going to normal summon the switch hitter, use the switch hitter to bring back the promotion, as we're then going to go into King Dempsey. King Dempsey can then add ourselves the crossing counter, as we're then going to be able to go into our lead yoke. We can then set 2 and end our turn on that. Now for this next combo, and this shows a little bit of a deck building choice that I decided to make in the pure variant, and I know that it looks like it collides with the promoter, which it kind of does, but at the same time you have to consider cutter, you're not always going to open the promoter, so that's why I play the Fenrir. Fenrir also has the ability to search us an extra fire warrior monster, so if you don't get into your promoter, maybe your upper cutter gets Veilered or something, then you still have the ability to Fenrir for the Rise Heart, and then you can just normal summon your other Battlin box or go into the King Dempsey. King Dempsey will give you the ability to search yourself the crossing counter, and just off this, you still get 2 disruptions. So what happens when you have the upper cutter along with the Fenrir, and we're going to start this one again by special summoning out the Fenrir so that we can then normal summon the upper cutter. We're going to use its effect first to play around the Droll, as we're then going to use the effect of Fenrir once we're free to, and then we can special summon out the Rise. We don't really care about the Exceed lock because the deck only really uses Exceeds unless you're playing the Infernoble version, and we're going to banish the Fenrir in order to make it level 7, go into our Shang Tsung, as we can then special summon out the Spar, go into our King Dempsey. King Dempsey can then get its effect in order to search the cross counter or the crossing counter, as we'll go on to our opponent's turn, and on our opponent's turn, the Shang Tsung can get ourselves the special summon of Fenrir for the extra disruption. Best hand for both versions of the deck, and I want to show another 2-card combo sort of with this deck, as we have the Durandal along with the Rhoda. Even though we do have the Fenrir, it really doesn't matter that much as it just adds along to the board, but we're going to activate the Prosperity, getting us a search, as we're going to not really hit much, so we're just going to get the Flamvell counter, and then we're going to use the effect of the Fenrir once we're free to so that we can get ourselves the Rise Heart. We'll use the effect of the Rise Heart, special summoning itself, activate the Rhoda, as now we can add ourselves the Chief Second. You can normal summon the Chief Second, and this is what I mean by the 2-card combo, where the Chief Second gives you an extra normal summon, so whatever you add off of the Durandal, you can just normal summon again. As we're then going to normal summon the upper cutter, get ourselves the Spar, we can then special summon out the Spar, play entirely into Nib just to beef up that token more, and then we'll go into the King Dempsey, use its effect in order to add ourselves the crossing counter, then we can go into our lead yoke, we'll be able to set 2 and end our turn on that. Since I didn't show a lot of the Infernoble version of the deck, I wanted to do a hand that shows all my ideas in one go, so that you can go back to watch my Infernoble video and this video as well, and it should give you an idea of how to play this deck to its entirety. So we're going to start this one by normal summoning the upper cutter. We're then going to use its effect in order to add ourselves the Flamvell counter. You can get the Spar if you want an extra normal summon, since that's not a hard once per turn special summon, and we're going to special summon out the Spar, go into our power tool with the Revolution Synchron. The power tool will give us the ability to add an equip. In this case, we're just going to do 2 All-Mace and 1 Durandal, or you can reveal 3 Durandal, as we're then going to use the effect of Revolution Synchron, milling 1, so that we can go into our Crystal Wing, protect our plays from here as long as it's not an imperm. We can then activate the Museum. Now we can get ourselves the Joyous to our hand, equip the Joyous onto the upper cutter, as we'll then be able to activate the Joyous to get ourselves back the Spar, special summon out the Spar so that we can go into our King Dempsey, and similarly to our previous Infernoble combo where we had access into the King Dempsey to get ourselves the Renaud, with the Spar in the graveyard, we can do the same thing so that we can get into our Isolde and Angelica access. So we'll now go into the Angelica, use its effect in order to grab us the Museum, and because we also have the Astolfo in hand, we can just go into the Isolde like this without having to use our Durandal. We'll then go into the Isolde as we're going to use its effect for the upper cutter, and send the Phoenix Blade to the graveyard from our deck to special summon out the Richardetto, then use the effect of the Richardetto to bring back the Spar, and then we can go and use our Phoenix Blade to bring it back to hand, then activate it on the Angelica so that we can use the effect of the Angelica, banishing it, sending the Turpin, which is important for this play, as you then want to use the effect of the Turpin, equipping it to the Roland. As we'll use the Museum now, special summon out the Turpin, we can then go into our Charles, as we'll then use the Roland, equipping it to Charles, and we can go into our Charles the Great, as we'll use the Charles the Great effect in order to equip the Charles, then we can activate our second copy of the Museum, use the effect of the Museum for another copy of the All-Mace or a Durandal, whichever you want to go for, and depending on what you have, of course, but we're going to go into our Roland, then use the effect of Roland, bring out the Charles from our equip with the second copy of Museum, as then we can bring back our Phoenix Blade to hand, activate the Phoenix Blade so that we can make the second copy of the Charles the Great, and then we can use the Charles the Great, equipping the Charles to it, as we'll then use the Turpin in order to special summon itself out. This will allow us to go into a second copy of Charles, as then we can activate our All-Mace on it. You can then use the effect of the All-Mace in order to get back your Joyous or whatever, activate the Durandal if you want the extra add. We can use the effect of the Durandal, get ourselves ourselves the Ogier, and now we can set a card as we'll be able to send the Durandal and add ourselves the Gearfried off the Roland, and then we can use the Charles the Great along with the Angelica to get more resources on board, with the Angelica coming back on board and equipping the Durandal along with the Ogier, while we have the follow-up of the Gearfried and either an Uppercutter or Ogier summon, giving us a pretty gigantic board. Get onto the deck profiles, and as you'll see, the extra deck is very standard for the pure version in regards to you just wanting to play a lot of the Battlin Boxer stuff, especially with all the extra deck sniping stuff being around with random rogue decks like Dogmatica, and then there's just Kashtira Unicorn, which can be splashed into a bunch of decks. It's something that you have to play around, so that's why I play the 3 Dempsey. We also have the 2 C79, the 2 number 79, the 2 Lead Yokes, just basically 2 of everything except Shang Tsung, so that we can play the Dark Armed, so that we can get the pop going second. Another new card that we have here is 7th Force. And I know some people have mentioned playing the rank up magic stuff in this deck. The only reason that I'm not a huge fan of it is because there's no real good way to search it, at least that I know of. And during the battle phase, if a monster is destroyed by battle or card effect, you get 1 number Exceed monster in your graveyard, special summon from your extra deck 1 number C monster with the same type as that monster but 1 rank higher. And if you do, attach that monster to the summon monster as material. Then if you summoned a monster with number C101 through number C107 in its name, you can add 1 Barrier Spell Trap, rank up magic, quick play, 7th spell trap from your deck to your hand except 7th Force. And as stated, your Dempsey just adds your Battle and Boxing spell trap cards. And another thing that I would like to point out is that there will be some hands where you just kind of lose to a Bestial if you can't get into something over 2300 attack, because as you saw in some of the combos, you may just end on Dempsey with 2 counter traps and pass. The real rough thing about that is that if your opponent just happens to activate a Bestial, it means that you're in danger of losing your Dempsey in the battle phase, and if you use the counter trap on the Bestial, it means that you're just losing your Dempsey, you're losing the counter trap. Your opponent is trading 1 for 2 with you, and they're just happy with that. That said, while that is partially a weakness for this deck, the deck definitely does have some strengths, with the ability to play about 15 slots for going second, and then you have your 2 counter traps for going first. You have a very solid engine overall, with the ability to have the Sparer that can just repeatedly special summon itself, and that's pretty nice. Prosperity is an easy spot to play, as you can just banish your multiples of cards that you may not go into, and it just gets you into an extra card that you may need to help you combo, because one thing is that while you do only need 1 or 2 cards to combo in this deck depending on what you open, you do play a lot of going second stuff. In fact, about half your deck is going second stuff. That just means there may be hands where Prosperity is going to have to save the day. Lastly, I would like to mention that there is a world where you can play the Revolution Synchron with the Power Tool and the Crystal Wing if you want to make your boards bigger, but again, with all the extra deck sniping, I'm kind of scared to do that in this particular build, because the Battle and Boxer stuff wants to focus on getting out your Dempsey, getting your counter traps, just things of that nature. It doesn't have the special summon spam ability that you saw in the Infernoble version, so that's why I've built the deck in this way. So I'm just going to get onto the card by card before I get into the Infernoble version. And we have the 3 Promoter, the 3 Uppercutter, the 3 Second Chief. We then have the 3 Sparer, the 2 Switch Hitter, the 1 Boxer Shadow, which was the only card that we didn't use in the combos, and during your main phase you can detach 1 Exceed material from a Battle and Boxer Exceed monster you control, and if you do special summon this card from your hand, it's an extra extender that can also make your Lead Yoke a little bit stronger. So then we have the 3 Talents, the 3 Durandal, the 3 Prosperity, the 1 Rise Heart, the 1 Rhoda, Flamvell Counter, Crossing Counter, the 3 Imperms, 3 Droll, 3 Ash Blossom, 3 Fenrir to round out the main deck. To the extra deck we have Lingeribo, number 41, the 2 Lead Yoke, number 79s, the 3 King Dempsey, the 2 C79s. We then have the 1 Dark Arm, the 1 Shang Tsung, and the 2 Zeus to round out the extra deck. Lastly, I would like to touch up on things like Crossout, Called By, and Designator along with Nib. As you saw, there are times where you can special summon more than 5 times, so Nib can hurt you. Same thing with Deep Barrier, as you're primarily just playing Exceed monsters, so that's something that you definitely do want to deck build around, as long as we have to play through cards like this. to the Infernoble version, and I've decided to go on a heavier Infernoble version count rather than the Battlin boxer stuff, which is why I really did not want to focus on it too hard in this video, since I didn't want to make it another Infernoble video. That said, I do think that the ability to have Isolde and Dempsey access the uppercutter and the Sparer is just really nice. So the Sparer does require you to have a Battlin boxer, which can mean that it is sort of a brick if you don't see your Durandals and stuff. That said, also see that I'm not on the promoter or the chief second, and it's because I don't want to take away from the combo ability that this deck has. I feel if you're going to play the Infernoble combo way, it's just better to play the Infernoble cards themselves and then use the Battlin boxer stuff as a sub-engine. With that said, as you saw, we're usually using our King Dempsey as ink material before we can end on the crossing counter with it. That's exactly why you see that we're only on the Flamvell counter, as getting the uppercutter to the graveyard isn't that hard, and just being able to add the extra spell and trap negation to play around Dark Ruler is really nice. Aside of that, I don't have too much else to say about the list, except that there are some changes that you can do, maybe like the 1 thrust and 2 talons. You don't need to max out on the museums. Terraforming, I don't think, if you want to add in more going second slots. The uppercutter can just get you into Isolde anyways. And that's after you go into the Angelica and search out your museum. But with that said, I'll just get onto the card by card, as I don't really have too much else to say about the deck that I didn't show in this video. Link down the Infernoble video below so that you can learn how to play that deck if you want to play this version of it. So we're going to start with the 3 uppercutter, the 3 Sparer, the 2 Ogier, and the 1 Turpin. We then have the 3 Museum, 1 Terraforming, Almace and Joyous. We then have the Flamvell counter, Gearfried, Renaud, Richardetto, the Astolfo, the 3 Evolution Synchron, Blade, the 1 Rodan, the 3 Durandal, 3 Talons, 3 Imperms, 3 Droll, and 3 Ash to round out the main deck. Onto the extra deck, we have the 2 Dempsey, 2 Roland, 2 Angelica, 1 Power Tool, Crystal Wing, 2 Charles, 2 Charles the Great, 1 Flame Swordsman, and 2 Isolde to round out the deck profiles. For everyone who's made it this far, I'd like to thank you for watching and for the 600 plus subs. I truly appreciate your support, and now that we've monetized the channel, giving us access to supers and membership, which means that more awesome stuff is on the horizon. The channel membership, just click on the description below, and there will be a link that takes you there. You'll also notice a free Discord link that I've made for us too. If you want to support me as a content creator, even if you can't donate supers or get a membership for the channel, clicking on those thumbs up and subscribe buttons help a lot too. For those wondering, I do plan on making updates to the channel as the support on the channel grows. Anyways, I hope to see you on the next one. It's Bones, signing out.